We are live.
Live and
Well
streaming
done.
on Facebook. Jono Break here, Mark Phillips, and what I'm about to find out is an awesome fella called Sebastian. And don't be fooled by his those beautiful looks. He's Argentinian, yeah, is that right?
Yes,
Argentinian,
that's right.
living, of course, like all Argentinians do, living in Poland. And
yeah, sure, why not?
yeah. So Sebastian, welcome. Mark, how about you do a quick intro? You've known Sebastian longer than me. And
so Sebastian is a country hopper, a bit like all digital nomads. I met Sebastian, I don't know, what, 5 years ago?
No, we met in October 2017 in Rockhampton.
There we go, in Rockhampton.
Yeah. Oh, is that Rock? That's Rockhampton for the uneducated. Yeah. I mean, Rockhampton sounded classy then, like Rockhampton, you know. It sounded like a classy place for a minute.
What's this Rockhampton place?
Yeah.
Rocky to all the Aussies. It's up in central Queensland. I was running a program there for the incubation hub. Sebastian had just arrived in Australia. He had taken up the opportunity to move his startup from South America into Australia on the Queensland government's program. He was working out of another co-working space incubator we came to know very well down in Bundaberg, another huge agricultural area. And this brave, multilingual Argentinian rocks up and says, I'm here to help Australian farmers connect their land to the cloud, and we're going to do all this wonderful AI and IoT stuff, and let's just go make it happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes. So,
Bear with me a minute, sorry.
We talk regularly. We've not put in person for well over a year now, since he's been in Poland. I've since moved to France. Our businesses are growing in a multinational sort of manner. And so today we're actually going to ask Sebastian why he decided to move himself to Poland.
Less about asking. We're going to seriously grill him.
Okay, we're going to grill him.
Oh, that's I actually. It's,
well, Sebastian, before you do that, talk a bit about your business and then how that came to lead to you being in Poland. Yeah.
Okay, good. Basically, what we do is connecting sensors to internet. We have application for monitoring industrial processes and agricultural processes. So we try to digitalize the real world. We're some kind of Google Analytics, but for the real world. We can see what is happening in the farm, what is happening in a port, what is happening in a factory. So we do that by connecting sensors that recollect information slowly from different processes. And then we monitor that data, and when we find out that some pattern or some process is not moving in the way we expect, we trigger an alarm so someone can go there and see what's going on. We started with agriculture in Argentina more than 7 years ago, monitoring something that's called silo bags. Silo bag is a big plastic bag which measures like 100 meters. It can store up to 200 tons of grain. To give you an idea about how much grain is the equivalent of having 7 trucks full of grain in a plastic bag in the middle of your farm. So the farmers have the problem that the grain gets rotten because it's not stored in the proper way, because the animals break the bags. In Argentina right now, we have a crazy moment where some people break the bag because they want to steal the grain. So we install sensors there and we start monitoring that process. But then we realized that using the same technology, we can measure the irrigation, we can measure how the cattle is moving around the property, even how the power lines are moving. So I can tell you later, we start expanding in different industries. So coming back to the question, why Poland? It was just by accident. There's many other things that happened. After living in Argentina, I moved to Chile. I lived there for 3 years. Then I had the opportunity, thanks to the government of Australia, to go to Australia, to Queensland, and I stayed there for 2 years. Bundaberg is a beautiful area, but it's not that exciting. It's quite a small community. There are not many things to do. And one of the problems that Australia have, I think the only one, it's everything is too far away. Everything is too big. And so if you want to go to a nice area like Brisbane, you have to drive for 5 hours. And I really hate driving. So when I was there in Bundy, I received an invitation from Poland in order to participate on those innovation programs where the government gives you money to develop your business in another country. And I told them, guys, I've been in many of those programs. I'm a little bit tired about moving around. And they say, well, but we are not going to give you just money. We are also going to give you customers. And I say, okay, now you have my attention, tell me more. So look like the idea of this program is bring you to the country, establish your company, help you to grow, but they give you a contact with a specific problem. And in our case, it was the port of Gdansk, which is one of the biggest ports in the Baltic region. So I said, okay, why not? So I came here for a couple of months to execute the project. And I spent 6 months, 1 month in Poland, 1 month in Australia, 1 month in Poland, 1 month in Australia. And after a while, I met my girlfriend, and I said, well, so I moved here and I stay here.
That's fan. Wow, that's really cool. And it's funny because, you know, we hear this a lot from entrepreneurs, even Mark. I mean, you had your places you selected and kind of almost accidentally ended up where you were and then got stuck there because of COVID. But you hear this quite often. People just end up in a spot. The most common thing we get, we're in the mountains in Western North Carolina. It's like, what are you doing here? Like, what is an Australian doing in a small town in the mountains in North Carolina, you know, in amongst mountain folk, you know?
I just got asked that in a meeting.
Yeah. So that's a really cool story. So tell me a bit about, let's talk about some of the cross-cultural things first. All right. So yes. You're coming from a Portuguese, from a Spanish or Portuguese speaking country?
A Spanish speaking country.
Yeah. Argentina, Spanish.
Yes.
Right. And you're going into effectively a Polish speaking country.
Quite difficult.
Yeah. So how did you find that? And not just the language, the culture, you're trying to set a business, how did all that work out for you?
I would say a phrase in Polish, it is bardzo skomplikowane, which means it is super complicated. The Polish speaker always
super complicated in English. So you did really well there, man. So
it is the first challenge, I guess, when I moved from Argentina to Chile. Yeah. Despite both countries are one next to the other one, and to give you an analogy, it's like going from Australia to New Zealand, more or less the same culture, more or less the same language, but nevertheless there were a lot of differences in the culture, in the way that people speak. So it was a challenge to get used to. But during the process, I learned that I was expecting when I moved from Chile to Argentina that exactly the same products that work perfectly in Argentina, it will work perfectly in Chile. And
right, you could speak the same language, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Speaking the same language, having more or less the same heritage, because both countries are Spanish customs. From business point of view, nothing happened in the same way. So I found out that some products that work in Argentina, it doesn't work in Chile. Some product that works in Chile doesn't work in Argentina. But when you find out a product that works in Argentina and works in Chile, that it's going to work definitely in another country.
Right.
So then I moved to Australia, and Australia was challenging because it's a different language. And I took a decision at that time, which I think it was quite a good decision, which was moving to a small community like Bundaberg. In that way, you can build quickly a relationship because it's a small community. You're the new guy that comes from another country. Even though in Australia, that's not that fancy because everyone comes from another country. It's like, once I remember, we were having a beer with Mark, and in the same table, one guy was from America, and I was an Argentinian, and then it's like there were 5 or 6 nationalities with 5 or 6 people. So this is not common. It's not cool being from another country because everybody is from another country, but it helped me a lot.
Welcome to Australia.
Yeah, exactly. It helped me a lot being in a small community. It helped me a lot to build relationships, to meet people,
Sure.
and of course to improve a little bit the language, despite it was my second language. Poland.
Just pausing on that for a minute. So you talked about going
Yes.
from Argentina to Chile, right? And so
Yes.
same language. And so I actually talked about this in a mentoring moment a couple of weeks ago. We talked about my experience of moving from Australia to America, and I always say, they sound like, they quack like ducks, they look like ducks, they smell like ducks, they crap like ducks, but one of them isn't a duck,
No.
And they do say that the highest rate, and this might be interesting to see if it's the same going from, say, Spanish to Spanish, but they say the highest rate of expatriate failure is English people moving to English-speaking people moving to another English-speaking country. And because the language is the first immediate barrier that things aren't the same. And whereas I come here in America and I make some Aussie statements and they kind of smile at you and think you're cute and cuddly, but at the end of the day, they have no idea what you're talking about, right? And all of a sudden you found out you've offended someone, and because they do things differently here, you don't find out about that until the third person's told you, whatever the culture is. But have you seen that sort of thing too from Spanish to Spanish? Or, I mean, you talked about it going to Chile, which was a very different country.
What happened to me is, first of all, at the beginning, sometimes I didn't understand what the people are trying to say. It's like, to give you an analogy, Spanish in Chile is like English in Australia. So they speak, the Spanish there was different. It's like different word, different slang.
Yeah.
It's like, I didn't understand. And people speak fast. And it's like, what are you trying to say? I don't understand. So it took me a while until I got used to. That was the first barrier. Then there are some small difference in the people, how the people do business, or how the people relate. And actually what did happen, I didn't have, during that 3 years, I barely made local friends. In the first 6 months, all my friends were from Spain, from Mexico, from the States, from Australia. And then after all these people slowly start going away or traveling to different countries, I started making Argentinian friends because there is a big Argentinian community there. But it was difficult to make local friends, which I think at the end is what it makes you to remain or not in the place. If you can make local friends, you're going to stay. If you make friends who are foreign too, those friends tend to travel to another place, and then you lose that connections. So it's difficult to build roots with the community.
Look, and I appreciate you answering that question. I know that's off topic today, but
it's okay.
I think it's a really important topic because it's something we all go through when we translate to another country. And specifically the watch out for me is the English to English, or like to like.
Believe me, English or Spanish to Polish or those kind of languages is even harder. Because what happened here with Australia, I would say it was quite easy because despite it was not my language, I studied English for like 20 years. So I had some base and I can understand a little bit. And after a couple of months, communication wasn't an issue any longer. But with Polish, it's another level of difficulty because it's a completely new language in a completely different language family. So the words are not connected. The pronunciation is completely different. And when you're working in your own startup, it is slightly different than when you are working in another company. Because when I go to the office, if you're working in another company, you go to the office, you have your workmates. So you meet people and you make friends. But in my case, I am the boss. So it is hard to build that relationship. So I cannot make workmates. Or it's harder. And even though it's harder to practice the language because I'm quite old and I'm fluent in English, so I rather to speak in English than in Polish.
Yeah.
So that's another level of complexity.
Yeah.
So that's make everything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing because, you know, I hadn't thought about that in terms of, you know, because you're going in and establishing a business. So you're the boss from the get-go, right? So your work colleagues see you as a boss, and there's kind of that, and again, culturally it depends, right? So in Australia, you might have more of a mateship amongst your co-workers sometimes, not always. But, you know, like in America, it's a big no-no, right? We don't go out for beers as co-workers afterwards and things like that. And so I hadn't thought about that though, going to a completely different country, the people that you first hang out with. So what did you do to build a network, a friendship base?
It's hard. And I found out that even the older you are, the harder to build a strong relationship. Probably this is harder to explain because cultural barriers, but in Argentina or more romantic countries, Spain, France, you have smaller groups of friends, but really, really deep.
Yes.
Someone who is your friend is a really, really strong relationship. You know their family, you're part of their family. It's a super strong bond. While in countries like Australia or America, from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, you have probably more, more people. The relationships are wider but less deeper.
That's beautiful. That's spot on. And I certainly I grew up in a very ethnic area in Australia with a lot of Italians, Spanish. We had a whole bunch of, particularly the Latin speaking countries, and I noticed that like the whole family unit was just so tight. Everything was family. And even when we were in there, we were treated like family. Like we were brought in. I remember, you know, my best friend in high school, his mum always, you know, the typical Italian, you know, mama telling you how skinny you are and filling you with bowls of ravioli in the afternoon. We always went around to Frankfurt's place in the afternoon because that was cool, you know, and because we got a good feed. I got a sandwich at home if I was lucky, and so it's interesting that so that and of course then I guess you miss that too when you can't access that quickly.
Yeah. Ironically, I found out in Poland something similar. The concept of family, the concept of friendship, it is quite similar to the Spanish or Italian or Latin way of relationship. Of course, I have the language barrier, but I slowly am building relationships which are quite strong, or I quite feel comfortable with them. It takes time, but you can do it.
Look, thank you for going off on that. Oh, sorry, Mark, fire away.
So I was just going to sort of take that and compare that Australian situation, and often in Australia you'll make friendships with your customers.
Yes.
With your suppliers.
That's very true.
There's a lot of business relationships, more so than family relationships, because the families are spread out these days. Australia is quite a large country.
Australia has something which I really like, which is like this spirit of community or belonging that I remember in Brandenburg, everyone was looking the way to help me, to connect me. I remember that even I arrived there and I asked somebody, hey, I need to go to this address. How can I get a taxi? Because I have no idea how to get a taxi there. And then she said, oh, I'm going to drive you there. And I said, no, thank you. And even from the Argentinian point of view, it's like, that's dangerous. I don't know if you're going to shove in your car. But it was shocking. Like, no, thank you. You don't need to drive me there. You just, I need just help to get the taxi. And oh no, and she took me to the place. She drive me there. And I found out that kind of examples a lot of time, like people that immediately, oh, yes, I can do it. Let me help you. And that's a strong feeling of community that they want to help you in any way. It is something nice, and I haven't seen it in many places.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Without getting really stuck in this corner, but I'd agree with that. I mean, just even coming here to America, again, similar cultures, but very different. whereas Australia has always been the rights of the community. The spirit of mateship came out of the toughness of the country in its early European days and all that sort of thing. And so that spirit of mateship, we look after our mate, right? And we use the word a lot, right? And so Australia is very much about the rights of the community, whereas you come to America, and of course, the whole country is founded on the rights of the individual. It's my right to do X, even if that impacts you. I don't care. It's my right. And it's your right to get out of the way. and so, and again, they're generalities, right? Because if you said, you said what you said, and you probably wouldn't have had that much of an experience maybe in downtown Sydney in Australia, but definitely would have in Bundaberg or Rocky. Same here, right? I find very strong family values. I'm living in the South, very strong family values amongst community here. But you go up into the North and it's different. It's more like Australia. So yeah, it all depends. So anyway, what I'd love to do is I'd love to pivot. Sorry, Mark.
How do you take that language barrier and cultural barriers and then overlay that a complexity around your work?
Right.
Because you're doing artificial intelligence, doing IoT. These are new, the concepts are fuzzy, the technology is very precise and technical. You're trying to explain to people how you're going to put a device on a drone to drop it on top of a power line to measure the wind and the influence of.
Look, that's harder even when I had to present it in Spanish. It's like a couple of months ago, I took the job to ask to around 50 people in my network, hey, what do you understand about my company? And 90% of the answer were like, I don't know what you do in your company. And I've been doing this for 7 years. And I'm super proud of it. I'm trying to explain to everybody. And believe me, I try with a speaker coach, presenting coach, oratory presentation. I try a lot of things. We have been working for 2 or 3 months with a designer in a new way to present the company. And it's hard. People don't understand me in my own language. So of course, do it in a third language is even harder. Nevertheless, I keep on pushing and I keep on working examples where I can show them exactly like this product is for power distribution companies. So when I say that, people immediately, if they're power distribution companies, they look at me and say, okay, I am that kind of guy. What do you have for me? This product is for grain producers. And of course, a grain producer, look at us, 90% of your audience is not going to pay attention because they are not the target. But the small group that is your target, they pay attention. So answering your question, the way to solve that problem is building a precise message which target the audience that you want to reach, which is not easy. It's a super hard problem.
Yeah, so because you're kind of working across cultures, you're thinking about the way different people receive information, but then also, one of the things we talked about is that you're working in a dichotomy market as well in terms of software and hardware and all those things. So, I mean, so even there, it's like the software conversation might be different to the hardware conversation. So talk a bit about that.
And also, it is not about just the technical thing. You have different speeches for different receptors. Like I like to say that communication is not what I say, it's what you understand. And it's my role to produce a message clear enough that you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So the speech that I have for introducing my technology for a farmer, it is not the same speech that I use for a distributor of technology for farming. And it's not the same speech I use for the guy who released payments in the company. So for one guy, you need to show him what is the benefit in the daily routine, in the daily work. For the distributor, you need to show, or you prepare a message where you show them how they are going to make profit selling that product. For the guy who's going to release payment, you need to show them that the economy of the solution that you're offering makes sense for the company. For the manager, you need to show them how your product or what you're offering is aligned with their goals. So it's a super complex message that you need to target for every person in the organization. The bigger the organization is, the higher the amount of speeches that you need to prepare and the amount of people that you need to talk.
So 100% of your time is just preparing speeches right now, is it? Or
yeah. I have a spreadsheet like subject number 1, this profile, this message.
Yeah.
Subject, like literally, I have like.
I'm sure. Yeah, because I as I say, if you do it more than once, create a framework.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's wow, that's amazing, and just that complexity. I mean, let alone, as I said, the complexity in your business. So one of the things you said to us, though, that and I also want to switch to your challenge of getting investment, because that probably plays into this whole language culture barrier as well, and depending where your investors are coming from and what they understand. Then you've got your sort of your business platform, your business model. So talk to us a bit about you. You said you had some challenges. You've had some challenges with investors in the past, or still are, around. Okay, go.
We still have, because we haven't received any formal investment. Only, what is the name of this instrument? A convertible note, a small one at the very, very beginning of the company. I pitched my company like probably 50 investors or more, 100. I don't know. I already lost the count of investors. We haven't got any investment yet. They don't like the way we present it. We are not a typical company. We are quite a different startup. We don't want to be the next Google. We don't want to be the next Facebook. So it is hard to present.
But that's all right. No, but the way you presented that to me when we were talking about this prior to the call, you sort of said, well, because we have such a technical approach, sometimes what I understood is it's harder for investors to understand and get that. So,
the first thing that it's my co-founders and me and my co-founders, all of us, we have a really, really hard technical background. We met each other at the uni. Right. So all of us are related with electronic engineer in some way. So when investors evaluate your company, the first thing they say, oh, you are not a balanced team. You don't have someone who is a salesperson. You don't have someone in marketing. You don't have someone in finance. You are not a good startup. This is the first filter. You are not a balanced team. And actually, at the beginning, that was right, because when we arrived to the first accelerator, we are super engineering and super product focused.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, that was that way. Then we learned that we need to develop some secondary skills. We need to know about sales, we need to know about processes, we need to know about finance, marketing, etc. So everyone in the company, despite our super high technical role, we learn some soft skill or secondary skill. For example, I do more sales and marketing. One of my partners do more finance. Another of my partners do more operations. But all of us understand how the product works. And I think that this is a competitive advantage. And if you see all the companies that really succeed big way, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, the guy Mark Zuckerberg, the guys from Google, all of them have a really, really strong technical background.
Yes.
So from my experience, it's easier to go from a technical background to a software skill like sales, marketing. And I'm not saying that those are easy tasks. That's our super complex task that it requires a lot of learning and practice and reading. But it's easier going from a technical background to a marketing background, sales background, finance background, but vice versa.
Oh, absolutely. It's like learning a whole trade, a whole technology. It's there's still the ins and outs of that. I mean, I'm actually a marketer by trade, and so for me to jump across business is really, really easy. But I do it from a marketing point of view. I get excited by the technologies I work with. Mark's the same. You get excited by the technologies you work with, but at the end of the day, it's like, okay, I need to boil this down to something that people understand. And really, a lot of marketing, it's just a lot of common sense conversations at the end of the day. Knowing your target, and I actually say it now, rather than having the right conversation, it's joining in their conversation and providing a place of influence. And
exactly.
Yeah, so that's interesting because I noticed that with a one of the first startups I ever worked with, and he hired me because he says, I know nothing about marketing. I don't really want to know. It was all web based. Mark knows the guy, and it was kind of like halfway through our gig together, he said, I really need to learn this marketing thing, right?
Yeah,
and he became a terrific marketer.
It happened to me with the designer. It's like our designer must hate me because it's like he designed something and I asked, and so why do you do this? Why do you put this one here? So why don't this? Why don't that? It's like all the time I'm asking in order to understand, but why don't I like this more, this one? What is the difference? Why do you propose this? Because it is not about saying I don't care about this, do it. It's just trying to understand because that helped me to present or prepare better, everything better. And as I was saying before, the advantage of understanding how the product works and doing sales is that when I'm talking with the customer and they told me, oh, we have this problem, I can easily find out how can I make a small modification in my product to tailor it for their need. And that's why easily we become with a document like with 10 different products that which what we're offering today. All of them are exactly the same. It has a small detail that make the product more customized or tailored for a specific solution. But deeper inside, it is exactly the same.
Yeah. Wow. No, that's really cool. I mean, because I think it's always the end or the operator and the sales guy, kind of. and really when both are trying to have good conversations, and often the operator or the more engineering or technically minded can get a little too tech and dirty too early, and it's understanding the cycle that you're in, right? If you're talking to a CEO, that's a very different conversation than if you're then talking to the chief technology officer or the chief information officer. You're going to go into a bit more detail, and so whereas the CEO just like, how can you fix my problem in my business? It's
so Sebastian has some advantages though. The base technology that he's building from is very capable. It was a long way ahead of what others were doing at the market when they started. Right. Your communications chips and technologies is everything across the board. You're operating in all sorts of weather conditions, in all sorts of moisture conditions, in all sorts of temperatures, and you're running on all sorts of power sources. So there's not a lot of restrictions on your base technology, which is a really strong position to be in because you then modify it for the different environments, operating environments and business environments that the customer's looking for. Yeah. Both on a hardware level and with a software overlay.
Yeah.
You get to turn on various data sets for this customer, but turn off them for that customer when they're not needed.
But then it's how you explain that. I mean, Sebastian, you take over. This is your interview, but it's how you explain that to a customer so that at first they are intrigued and want to connect, right?
It is not easy, as I said before. The way we solve it is building examples. Like I have this product, as I said before, we have this product for grain producer that helps to understand how the grain is stored in a grape bag. This is a super narrow down problem for a target audience. We have a product for monitoring for power distribution companies to help them to find out where and when a cable fails. Again, a super narrow down message for a super specific customer segment. So once we present that and show them our capability with 3 or 4 examples, what generally happens is if the customer is not related with any of those things, they say, but I have this problem. How can we solve it? And it's when we say, okay, let's make a pilot, validate and try a new product and how it's sometimes we found out a new product. And it's interesting because you asked me before, how do we deal with investors and with investment? And I told you that it's super hard for us and we didn't get any. And one of the reasons is, for example, we have, and this was a super interesting conversation I had with one of my partners. We have a customer who every year buys some specific product and they pay every year licenses, and every year they add more sensors, and every year they add even more capabilities. And today we were analyzing a chart that we sold something in 2016. Next year, we sold them 3 times more. Next year, we sell them 3 times more. And it's stable. Every year, they are buying 3 times more. But this guy, with their specific need, we only found it in one country. And we tried to replicate the same experience in other countries, and we couldn't succeed. So we have this specific company, which every year is asking the same product. So I was discussing with my partner, is this a failure? Is this a problem? According to investor point of view, they will say this solution is not scalable. This problem only belongs to this customer. You need to forget about this. And it's like, should I forget that? It's paying the bills. So it's giving me money. So like, that's why we probably are not sexy for investors, but we have some customers who are paying for our technology.
Well, it's fascinating because we had that conversation this week in the mentoring moment, right, Mark? We talked about customer and targeting, and we're going through the business model canvas at the moment and just using that as a framework. But you're absolutely right. You know, the importance of being able to say, no, this is what matters to us. Even if we have a fantastic client over there, okay, so they're kind of like your investor, right? Or they're one of your investors. The beautiful thing is they don't want ownership of your company, but they're keeping the lights on, but that may be okay. So that pays the bills, and then we are targeting in another direction or in another area that we know has a broader appeal, a mass market. We're not going to get a client like that where it's almost like the gift that keeps on giving. You know, they just keep tripling every year. But that's enough of a case to say, well, that cash flows the business. But at some point in time, if the business goes in the right direction, at some point in time, that client maybe ceases to be a good client.
Well, sometimes what it also happens is some specific industries are super conservative. Actually, all the industries that we're targeting are super conservative. So it is not easy to show them, oh, we have this new flashy app. Do you want to use it? The answer is, hey, we have been doing this for the last 50 years and it's working. So why are we going to change it? It's educating the customer in order to show them, look, but if you do this, you're going to have these savings, or you're going to improve your profit in this way. So teaching them, it's a slow process, but it's working with some specific industries, with some specific countries, with some specific customer. So our bet in the long term is, at some point, we are going to replicate that experience in another customer because they are having this problem. I'm pretty sure that other companies having the exact same problem. It's not black magic. It's not rocket science. It's like they are doing the same every year. And I see it in newspaper. I see it in articles. Companies having the same problem, and I using that. What we building, like, hey, you have this problem. We have done this. We have done this. We have done. And at what point it's going to work, and we're going to scale that.
Yeah. And so is it more that, you're saying because the customer is a bit more conservative, a bit more old school, that they're kind of just resisting the technology more than they're resisting the fact that there is a problem. And
exactly.
Because I mean, that's very common, and particularly when you start getting into agriculture or anywhere like that, you know, there's a lot of, well, we've always done it this way, you know, a lot of traditions, a lot of lucky charms.
that provides disruption opportunities for more nimble, you know, and particularly in agriculture, it's a global market. You know, people are buying and selling products all around the world for a few pennies difference. You know, it doesn't take much for somebody to buy from the other side of the world than to buy next door. It's super competitive. But continuing to supply products, fruit, food of any sort, with a supply chain just time with varying environments and climate changes effects and things like this is getting harder for those agricultural companies. Even we've seen massive outages of internet this year as demand suddenly went through the roof when everybody had to work from home. it created an environment where the leaders, to maintain their position, had to react very quickly. And so just-in-time information becomes even more important in these volatile times.
Yeah, and I think that's an increasing issue for particularly for Western agriculture as well, where costs are high, all those sorts of things, and there's a pressure on land and foreign ownership and all sorts of things, and countries. I'm in the United States, and the United States is probably leading the charge in this, becoming increasingly protectionist in terms of their food stocks, their supplies, and how do we still get those things to market in a cost-effective way. And so, yeah, it's a fascinating world you're in, Sebastian. It really is. Yeah. So I want to do a kind of a dramatic shift in the conversation here and talk about co-founders for a minute. So I worked with a company years ago, which was a co-op of 15 doctors. Now that business couldn't get anything done, anything useful and strategic. Very smart people, nothing got done. Now, you talk to us a bit about, now you haven't got 15, obviously. You said you had 4 co-founders. And yes. So talk me through that. And basically, well, let's first of all talk about what's really, really great about that, and then where the challenges lie.
I'm going to add something else to make it more spicy. We are 4 co-founders, and we are right now in 4 different countries.
Wow.
Yeah. And while I was in Australia, we were in 3 different time zones, shifted like 8 hours each one, which was challenging. Despite we are 4, it's a big number. Generally, again, investors like to have 3 co-founders maximum, not 1, not 2, but not 4. So it's a problem because of the decision-making process, because you need to align too many people. That's generally the problem. What happened to us is we have the same mindset. We see the world the same way. So when we take the decision, for us, it's super simple. Actually, we have a meeting once a week, 1 hour, where we discuss quickly what happened during the week. We have all of us. We have quite independence in the decision-making process, because we understand that each of us has some level of specialization in a specific. Sorry for saying many times the same, but a specific field. So, for example, if we're doing something about logistics and how we are going to do the supply chains and where we are going to buy this, I took the decision by myself, like straight away. I don't need to ask permission, like, hey, I'm thinking that this manufacturer is going to be cheaper and faster. No, I took the decision straight away. And then I informed them, hey, I'm changing this. And generally, there is no problem. Sometimes it happens.
But to have that, you've got to have a decent level of trust between those co-founders, right? That they trust the fact that you're going to make the right decision on behalf of the business.
Yes, yeah, we trust each other a lot. Actually, we know each other for many years. One of my co-founders, I met him when I was 15 years old, and we have been working together in many different projects. So it's the kind of people that when we go together to a meeting, we don't need to talk to understand what is thinking each other. So we see each other and we know what he's thinking, and we can complement each other while the conversation, just looking at. So that's make everything simpler. So it's important to know the people that you are working really deep. And also it happened with our employees. All of our employees are people who have been working with us in different things for many, many years. Some of our employees, for example, my brother is one of my employees. One of my classmates at the uni is one of my employees. So it's people that we know for more than 10, 15 years. And we trust each other. And we build our relationship based on that trust. That's allow us to make faster decision, move forward, reduce all the friction. Actually, I remember many years ago, we were having a discussion about how to implement something, and one of my partners got really frustrated because, hey, it is not possible that we spend 1 hour discussing this topic and we cannot agree. And I say, Yes, actually it is, and it's the first time in like 3 years or 4 years. It was in 2019. It was the first time in 5 years that we have a disagreement in how to implement something. Two of us were thinking one way, two of us were thinking the way. The drivers were the same. We wanted the best for the company, but we were measuring the risk in different way. From my point of view, something was riskier than the other stuff. That was the first time in 5 years that we couldn't agree immediately in something. So I'm quite lucky, I would say. We are a lot of people.
That is an incredible track record. Incredible. Yeah. It's like, I want to come and do a case study on your business.
Yeah, thank you.
but like you're saying, the depth of relationships. So these aren't just people that randomly just came in and said, I want to be a co-founder from nowhere. Obviously they have a skill set and they bring something to the game because that's why they're there. But these are people you were already in relationship with, that you were already connecting with, and you could see there'd be that great compliment. And it sounds like you kind of wanted to have a bit of fun together as well. And
it's one of the mottos or like in the culture of the company. One of the bases is like, we're going to spend a lot of time working, at least 8 hours per day. So if we're to do that, let's make it in an environment where we feel comfortable, where we are doing things that we like. Of course, there are days that some shitty thing happen and you say, oh, again, I need to deal with this problem, and you don't like it. But in average, the moments that you're doing something that you like and you enjoy in a nice environment are more than those moments that you have to deal with some problem that you don't like.
That's fantastic. So you've really made because most people would say 4 co-founders. I mean, that's starting to get up there. Now, it's funny because it's quite common for companies to have 4 or 5 directors or more. They say no more than 7 or 8, but or an odd. I like odd numbers too, because then you can split the vote, right? And but at the same time, I mean, that's amazing. And I think the key message that I'm hearing is the relationship, is the connection, is that like it wasn't just a dive in.
I think that's something that happened that helped us in this decision-making process. It is that at the beginning, we agreed, like in part of our culture, we can say that we had to disagree with each other. Like, we are allowed to disagree. Like, I can propose we should do this, and someone can say to me, hey, I disagree. I think the best way to do it is this way. So, okay, explain me. So every time, fight for their position. Like, hey, I wanted to do it this way. No, I wanted to do it that way. It gets super Latin, passionate fight where we disagree. But the important thing is, once we make a decision about what is the best way to do that task, all of us, we commit in executing that in that way. So it is good to disagree, but it's important that when we agree in that we're going to do this, all of us, we push in the same direction.
I don't know if you've read the book by Patrick Lencioni called The Advantage, and he actually talks about this, and he says you need to, like, it's okay to disagree, but as a team, you disagree and commit. Right.
Exactly.
So, but you must be able to put out there that you disagree and why.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's exactly like that.
Fascinating. I love it. The Latin passion too. I'd love to be in one of your meetings. That'd be fun. Wouldn't understand a word, but
it is super. I love it because
I'm sure I get the nuances.
I love it because with one of my partners, we talk all the time. It's like yesterday we spent like 4 hours in different phone calls with different people. Today we spend also 2 hours, and I should be in another one in a couple of minutes. So it's like we spend a lot of time together, and we argue a lot. And sometimes one of my partners, who is Russian, when he at the beginning,
he's Russian.
Yes, he couldn't understand the fights because we got super passionate. And it's like, hey guys, take it easy, don't fight. No, let me fight. Fuck.
We have a vodka. We sort this out,
Yeah. So, but the point is, we shout a lot, we argue a lot, but then we find out the balance. It's like, okay, let's do it that way. And after we say, okay, let's do it that, it's like super smooth. And it goes.
Yeah, that's interesting. And we will let you wrap up because I know you've got to get onto other things. It's almost the top of the hour, but that's an interesting one because, I mean, even if the four of you were in a room with, say, a bunch of Americans, right? Like just normal Anglo-Americans, and you started behaving like that, the Americans would just be like, we can't cope. We can't deal with this. We've got to keep it calm. And
yes, exactly. That's his reaction. He lived like in America for 10 years. So he's quite embedded with the culture. And it's like, he sees us fighting and after almost 7 years. It's like, he's still like, why are you fighting? Don't fight. And it's like, take it easy. Let me send regards to his mom. And after that, we finish with that. I'm going to carry on smoothly. But now I want to kill him.
Yeah. And it's funny. It's something that's very endemic in those Latin cultures. You know, again, there was a group of Italians who would hang out the front of my father's shop in Wollongong, where I grew up. And they had a giant chessboard there. They'd come every day and they'd just be yelling at each other all day. And we're just like, oh my goodness, there's going to be a fight soon, but they're all best mates.
Yes,
and
exactly.
then they'll go and have their grappa later or something like that. You know, yeah. Look, that's really cool. Look, as I said, we do need to wrap this up. It's been close to an hour, and it's been a fantastic conversation. I'd love to have more of a conversation about, with you about this, how you mix cultures and the communication journey in that. I think that'd be a good one for our guys, Mark, in terms of how you build a cross-cultural business. And how you take those notes.
Something really early. Sebastian started this very early in their startup, so it's right. Something put on the list before many other things maybe, because it gives you a grounding, it gives you a good solid base to grow quickly from.
Absolutely, and so obviously it's built on those relationships, it's built on that trust. Mate, this has been a fantastic conversation. I've really enjoyed it. It's gone so quickly.
No, but come on, drop. Do you have? We can do another more question. What do you have in mind? What do you?
I honestly, I kind of feel like any more questions would ruin it. I think it's been a great energy. I've really, I mean, you're amazing to interview. It's been fun. And so I would love to do another one at some stage, just in the near future.
Okay, yes,
yeah,
sure.
And just have another chat and maybe about that whole communication piece. That's kind of my background and game as well. But then I think, Mark, it'd be good to do another one around the marketing as well. We talked a bit about customers and so forth. I think there's just some really interesting dynamics in your story that speak to so much of that traditional entrepreneurial journey. So I've really appreciated it. Mark, do you have any closing thoughts at all?
No, I'm just going to wrap it up because that was just so much more than what we were expecting. Of understanding the
we were expecting a lot.
We were getting ready to hammer you, but no, you
I don't know what Mark promised, so I can't say that. But
Mark and I hardly talked about you. It was all yours and my conversation. So I felt like I knew you when we'd already got on, and you communicated beautifully. Just for the record, your English comes across fantastically. And so you don't need to stress about that. I know you're a bit concerned because it's not your first language. It came across beautifully. And so it's been a wonderful conversation. I'm Jono Brake. This is Mark Phillips. We've been with Sebastian Cerone, and this has been a fantastic conversation. We'll leave comments, questions, and we'll pass them along to Sebastian. We're going to sign off from the live feed now. Good having you all. See you later.
Thank you. See you later.